Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. I am your host, Viz, and today we are joined by executive producer Peter Phok. Peter, thank you so much for being our guest today. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I should correct you. It's Poke actually. It's a silent
Phok.
H.
Ah,
Poke. It's
okay. Peter
commonly
Phok.
mispronounced, but you know, it's all good.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And let's just get right to it. You and Ty West have worked together so many times. How long have you and Ty known each other?
I think it's nearly 20 years now. I mean, to age ourselves. We met at the School of Visual Arts in New York City together in film school, and
The Village.
I remember distinctly meeting Ty in our big film history classes, and then but moreover later on in the editorial room back when we were still editing on film itself and using Steenbecks and stuff, and I just could tell that he was really into the craft, and so was I, and so we just really connected and bonded over that and
Well, that leads
supporting.
me to another question. He went through the directing route, writer. You went through the executive, the producing route. How did that come about? Where he went the directing route and you chose to produce?
I think that was just sort of a natural progression for me. I was in the same like producing. I mean, I'm sorry, directing track at School of Visual Arts. Producing wasn't a concentration at the time, but I quickly realized in having to produce our own short films that you always need a producer. Someone's got to kind of organize everything in order to create that environment in which a filmmaker can come in and direct a scene. And so, yeah, that's for me, that was my path. I just had a natural gravitation to organizing, all the chaos that is filmmaking.
And as fellow producers, we both know that producers do the bulk of the work when it comes to putting stuff together. So it's definitely the hardest job of them all. So I want to congratulate you on Pearl. It just came out just not even 2 weeks ago. It'll be 2 weeks this coming Friday, September 16th. It's now playing in theaters for anybody that has not watched it yet. It is a prequel to X. Again, Ty West directed and wrote the film. Now, what's weird about these two films is that they both came out in the same year, which is kind of unusual for like this new up and coming franchise. How did that all come about?
I mean, I think it was just the natural, organic situation that kind of rose out of the pandemic. X was a movie that went into production in beginning of 2021, and Ty had an idea for the prequel, and it's something that he's talked about a lot. Is like when we made the movie The Sacrament, we built the compound that's in that movie just outside of Savannah, Georgia, and all that effort that goes into it, and then when the movie was done, like all those sets just disappear, and it was sort of a shame to see all that work just go away. And so that was something that he felt he didn't want to see happen with X, and prequel is just a great place to go when you can revisit the same location and essentially restore it 60 years earlier.
And you mentioned The Sacrament. I gotta plug that film. It's an amazing film. Both you and Ty, it's the Jim Jones story, Jonestown, retold with slight variations. But what a great film that I really just stumbled upon by accident, like last month, if you can believe it. And I'm like, what's this? And I checked it out, and what a great film that was. And to find out that Ty directed it, you produced it as well, just goes to show the long list of great films that you guys worked on together. Now, were you brought in as a executive producer for both X and Pearl right from the start?
I mean, I think Ty had been brewing the script for X for some time, the story, and he just felt that like A24 was going to be the company to make the movie. And once it started going, I got a call from both Ty and Jacob Jafke, our producing partner, who's been with us through this journey as well. And yeah, they were heading off to New Zealand to go find a location, the farm, to make this, to double the double for Texas ultimately.
Hmm.
And then because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to join them out there, but managed all the post production on the movie remotely, and so that was its own unique sort of situation, given that we had an editor in LA, production going on in New Zealand, and getting all that footage, back and
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
Now, the films encapsulate this for the opening and closing credits, this sort of 1960s type feel with the type of fonts that are used for the credits, the smile from this psychopath of a girl. Then you have sort of the tributes to classic horror movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a little bit of Psycho. How was that all brought together?
I mean, like Ty is such an encyclopedia of cinema, of movies. I mean, he's been watching them. I remember specifically in college, he's from Wilmington, Delaware. We would go down there to shoot some of the short films, and then end up staying at his parents' house. And then we'd always end up watching something because he's just such a well watched individual with movies. And so I think we have been making movies for such some time that there's just trust.
Hmm.
It's like I read the script and I just know that Ty's going to come up with something so unique in the approach, and we saw that in X, and then he delivers it even more with Pearl. I remember reading Pearl as X was prepping to go into production, and I was just kind of blown away with the script and how nuanced this character. It's a real deep dive into into a basically killer.
Psychopath. I mean, it doesn't get more nuttier, and we're gonna get to Mia Goth in a second. Now, there's a post credit teaser scene at the end of X for Pearl. Rumor has it that both movies were shot 3 weeks apart. Is that true or not?
Yeah, it's fairly accurate. I mean, essentially, yeah, 4 weeks really was we had wrapped X, and then prep when it immediately went into effect on Pearl with the same crew that was in New Zealand at the time. And then in that time, Ty was then working on the X cut. And so, I mean, we were really then juggling two movies as then Pearl went into production for about 4.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have two movies to kind of get through. So the focus was on getting X done and then out, and that was incredibly exciting while not losing traction on the progress of Pearl, and we're just incredibly supported by A24. I can't speak enough great things about them, and I'm wearing the X shirt that
Yeah.
they put out. So it was just sort of like and I think the teaser for Pearl kind of came about very close to when we were about to, play and premiere the movie at South by Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, there was a lot of internal conversations about it. And, I think, because it hadn't been announced yet, it was very exciting to kind of share that not only, is this forthcoming, it's essentially done. At that point, editorial was
Yeah.
was already picture locked, and we were moving into the finishing of it.
Now, going back to A24 for a second, you got to give them a lot of credit because that was business wise, it's a risky move. You don't know how X is going to do. They didn't know that it was going to be the success that it was because there's no guarantees in this business. But for them to feel so secure to put out two films the same year, was that a negotiation? Were they on board the whole way with that? I mean, you as the producer, how did that go?
I mean, I think they were very they're very supportive as for the filmmakers, very filmmaker friendly, and we found that by Ty would set the stage. He told them about the movie and then went off to write it, delivered the script, and then so it's a process, and he's delivering on it. I think we all saw the potential in X while it was being filmed. You could see it in the dailies. I mean, X was
Mm-hmm.
something really special. All the effort that went into even the look development that was put into the dailies. So I think early on, everyone just had such a confidence in what Ty was making with X that the once the concept of how do we make Pearl kind of was figured out. I think it was just a really smart decision. I mean, we had
Oh
so many
yeah.
other people already there, and you're in the middle of a pandemic, so yeah, you have then, on the other side of it, the option to release two movies in potentially the same year, which is what has happened.
Exactly, and not have to start fresh with each one. Now, let's talk about the time periods. X takes place in the 70s, Pearl during the end of World War One. How important are the time periods to the storytelling for X and for the prequel Pearl?
Ty, I think chooses that time because he's focusing on the filmmaking aspects of this like Technicolor world, and honestly, I just felt that like to take the story back to Pearl, as a young woman, coming of age and kind of really figuring herself out. I mean, I think that's where the story kind of lies because we
Mm-hmm.
meet her much later in her life.
Exactly, exactly. And uh, for you, you also recognize the importance of what Ty did in exploring, I don't want to say origins, but basically how she evolved to what we see all saw her in X.
Yeah, I mean, like, so the other thing is that, like, the first thing Ty did was speak to Mia about staying, how would she feel about staying a little longer because he had this kind of idea for a prequel, and then they started to write it together. And while he was in quarantine in New Zealand, was FaceTiming with Mia in developing this character, and at the very least, they felt that like at least this background on the Pearl character would inform her performance in X, and then if they get the opportunity to make that movie, then we would have something really special.
Exactly, yeah. So let's talk about the character Pearl. It's very easy for us to label her as a psychopath, sociopath, and just be done with it. But it goes a lot deeper than that, and that is slowly given to us through both films. For me, Pearl is like someone who is desperately afraid to be left alone. She also desperately wants to get out of that farm and become a movie star, a dancer, do something with her life. What are your feelings? How do you view Pearl?
Well, I think she's a product of her environment. And in that area, I mean, I think, what Ty was really sharp to do was to set it during the Spanish flu, which is like something, with the pandemic we've
Mm-hmm.
experienced. I think it's something that is very relatable. And I think mental health, issues, arise when, you're, forced to be living in such isolation. And I think that's what was going on with Pearl. She was longing for her husband, who was in another country fighting the war, and then has a really very strict mother,
Yeah.
and so she just dreamed for a better life. And I think I mean, as people who love movies, I think movies can offer a little sense of escapism,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think that's she goes there and just seeking it, and um, maybe gets a little carried away with what she wants, and like kind of loses a grip on reality, and I think that can happen to the best of us. I think if we were to really circle back and think, to the conversation about the sacrament, I mean, I don't think people say, "Hey, I want to join a cult." Like it's sort of you get indoctrined,
Yeah.
and you just don't know how you end up there.
My favorite scene of Pearl, well, of both movies, this is in regards to Mia. At the end of Pearl, when she's talking to Mitzi, you know what I'm getting at, and she does
Mhm.
that big story, that big reveal. Oh my God, was that captivating? Is such an understatement. What did you think about that whole scene and how Mia played it out?
Well, Mia is just like a force,
Mm-hmm.
and she proved herself in the dual roles in X, and then in Pearl she just brings it to the next level. In that sequence, it's like Ty describes filming that as a stunt because you're just gonna like turn the camera on and let her go,
Yeah.
and there's a very specific point in the dialogue in the monologue where um, once they get past that point, they have to kind of run it to the end. And if,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's tricky, but this is movie making and it's exciting to do something, a little different and not, usual. It's unexpected. And I think, that's how, Ty continues to subvert audiences. I think going into Pearl, we're seeing, it's such a different style of filmmaking and it's refreshing, that it's not just, it's not X again.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Now, there is a third one that's listed called, well, for now it's called Maxine with three X's. Um, just Mia Goth, Ty West are only listed for the project. I assume you're going to be involved with that as well.
Yeah, that's the plan. Ty, while we were, in editorial on Pearl, I mean, he has a great, kind of follow up and making a trilogy. I mean, he talked about it being a trilogy all the way back at South by Southwest earlier this year. So for me, it's like, I'm here to support Ty in any way that he needs. And I think, we're going to be in for another awesome ride in Maxine.
I'm looking forward to that. In the few minutes that we have left, I want to talk about some of your other projects because you have done so many great movies. The Innkeepers, Sacrament, that we've talked about, VHS, 1BR, great, great horror movies. The Innkeepers, Sarah Paxton was my guest. Did you get to sleep at the Yankee Peddler Inn as well?
Absolutely. The origins of the Innkeepers, the movie, is because we stayed at the Yankee Peddler Inn while making the House of the Devil. That was about the Yankee Peddler was in Torrington, Connecticut, and about 40 minutes just away from the house in the House of the Devil. And so we all lived there, and we were on these crazy night schedules, and everyone was having these incredible dreams. And so Ty was inspired to kind of write a story about the place because it was so unique, it was so kooky. And it was a movie that I think I'll never prep a movie as quickly as I did that because I already knew the owner and was able to get like I said, hey, you remember us? We were a rowdy bunch, of staying up all night. Well, we want to come back and make another movie there, and they were like, okay, and this gave us the keys and let us have at it.
Another movie, 1BR, Alok Mishra. Nicole Bryden Bloom. I mean, that turned out to be a big sleeper hit on Netflix. How did you get involved with that?
Well, it's a funny I think LA story. Alok and I met at a bar in LA, just and it used to be my old spot. It was one of those conversations where he was talking to me and he just said, "Hey, yeah, I just produced my first horror movie." And that's all he kind of said to me. And I said, "Oh, I know a little bit about horror movies," is kind of my response. And not knowing him, just meeting him and not knowing what I was getting into. But then, he shared the movie with me at that point. And they had just finished kind of picture locking the movie and they were just kind of getting through the finishing. And so I screened it at home and really was blown away with what David Murmer did in that movie. I thought it was such a strong offering from a first-time filmmaker. I think, Nicole's incredible in the movie. I think the movie is not what you think it's going to be. And I think that's always the best when when you're kind of surprised. And I think it's, and it's one of my favorite endings that I've seen in a while. And so I was super jazzed and I just wanted to support the filmmakers. That's what I'm about. I got my start at Larry Fezzan's production company, Glasslight Pix. And so, and he was always in advocating for the artists. And so this is what, I've kind of taken on to do. And so I helped Alok, kind of navigate their film festival, strategy and help them find a distribution partner in Dark Sky Films, who, I've made a number of films with as well, including, The Innkeepers and House of the Devil. And Stakeland as well, Jim Nichols movie. So they invited me on as an EP, and I was just cheerleading for them, and the movie opened during the pandemic, so we didn't get to see it in theaters, sadly. But when Netflix picked it up in our secondary window, it managed to get to #1 in the U.S., which was incredibly exciting for, a very small title.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud to be involved with the movie and supportive and look forward to what David brings next. I think he and Alok and Alok's producing partner are all working together on something new. And I'm working with Alok on a series offering. It's actually Alok and I and Eduardo Sanchez, along with an anonymous writer who goes by the name of Bleeding Critic.
Wow. That's pretty cool. All right. So last question. Out of all these amazing films that you worked on, this is going to put you on the spot. Is there a particular project that holds a special place in your heart?
Absolutely. It kind of goes back to my origins and where I kind of started. Right. And I'm very grateful to Larry Fessenden and his company and the opportunity. So, I mean, we got to make The Roost right out of college, and that's where I met Larry, and that was Ty's first feature. And then we went back to make Triggerman and Graham Resnick's movie I Can See You, but it wasn't until I jumped on Glenn McQuaid's movie called I Sell the Dead. It's just like horror comedy about a pair of bumbling grave robbers in the late 17th century in the like fictitious British Isles. It stars Larry and Dominic Monaghan as well as Ron Perlman, and I just had a real blast making that. It was a real step up for me to kind of get more established and recognizable faces involved with the movie. We went all out with it, and I think we played like so many film festivals. It's a film that's dear to me because I just really felt like I had graduated to something much bigger.
I totally understand. Peter, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing the stories about X, Pearl, all these other amazing movies. Guys, Pearl is out in theaters right now. If you've watched X, you got to watch Pearl. It's the prequel. Peter, you have any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, I think, keep going to the movies.
Exactly. They made a comeback. I was questioning there for a while during COVID. I'm like, are they going to survive this? But they did. To my surprise, they did. And I'm so happy that they did, because going to the movies is not just about the movies. Like everybody says, it's the experience that cannot be replaced. I want to thank our guest, Peter Phok. I want to thank our audience, those of you who are tuning in live, and those of you who will be tuning in later on. Stay safe on behalf of Peter and myself. Till next time, stay walking. Bye, everybody.